What happens when the former head of America's top law enforcement agency is charged with crimes? Does justice truly prevail, or does politics take the driver's seat? Think about that for a second, because today we're diving into a case that isn't just about one man. It's about the very soul of justice in America. All right, let's start with the facts. James Comey, the man who once stood at the very top of the FBI, has been indicted on 2 federal charges. 1 count of making false statements, 1 count of obstructing Congress. Now, let's pause for a second and really think about that. These aren't minor accusations you can sweep under the rug. False statements to Congress, that's perjury territory, lying under oath in front of the very people who represent the American people. And obstruction, that's like putting up a roadblock in front of justice itself, trying to keep the truth from ever seeing daylight. And here's the jaw-dropping part. If Comey is convicted, he could face up to 5 years in prison. 5 years! Imagine that. The former director of the FBI, the man once in charge of upholding America's laws, potentially sitting behind bars like the very criminals he used to investigate. The symbolism of that alone, it's staggering. But wait, there's more to this story. The grand jury was actually presented with a 3rd possible charge, and you know what? They rejected it. They didn't think there was enough to move forward on that one. And that raises a big question. Was the evidence on the other 2 charges rock solid, or were prosecutors just barely able to convince the jury to act? This is where things get really complicated, because in a case like this, where politics and justice are tangled up together, every detail matters. Every decision, every rejected charge, every word in that courtroom, they all feed into one central question. Is this case about the truth, or is it about something else entirely? From the very beginning, this indictment was never going to be just about James Comey. It's about trust in America's justice system itself. And the deeper we go into this story, the more you'll see just how blurred that line between law and politics has become. So, what exactly landed James Comey in this position? What did he say or not say that has now come back to haunt him? Let's rewind the clock to September of 2020. Comey sat in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, sworn in, under oath, cameras rolling, the whole nation watching. And the question was clear. Did he ever authorize FBI officials to act as anonymous sources in the media during a sensitive investigation? Now, Comey's answer? No, absolutely not. He denied it flat out. Simple, clean, end of story. Or so it seemed. But here's the twist. Prosecutors now say that wasn't true. They allege that Comey did know about FBI officials talking to reporters. Worse, they claim he encouraged it. And by denying it in front of Congress, under oath, he wasn't just misspeaking, he was lying. That's perjury. And when the stakes are that high, the law calls it something even more serious: obstruction of Congress. But let's stop for a second. Was this really a deliberate lie? Or was it one of those carefully worded answers, the kind where lawyers argue for hours over what a single phrase actually means? Because if you've ever watched a high-level government hearing, you know the game. Every word matters. Every sentence is loaded, and sometimes the truth hides in the gray areas. And that's where this gets messy. Was Comey playing semantics? Was he protecting the Bureau? Or did he just outright lie? These are the questions a trial is supposed to answer. But let's be honest. When politics is involved, sometimes the courtroom isn't about the facts. Sometimes it's about the narrative. And that's exactly why this testimony controversy matters. Because if Comey lied, it's a betrayal of the oath he swore before Congress. But if he didn't, and this is just a political spin on his words, then this indictment is more about silencing an enemy than delivering justice. Either way, it's a bombshell moment that set the stage for everything that followed. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because you can't talk about James Comey without talking about Donald Trump. Their story is almost like a political thriller. Two powerful men circling each other, clashing in ways that changed American history. Remember 2017? Trump had just taken office and the Russia investigation was heating up. The FBI, under Comey's leadership, was digging into whether Trump's campaign had ties to Moscow. And then, boom, out of nowhere, Trump fired him. The President of the United States actually removed the FBI director leading an investigation into his own campaign. It was a shocking move, and it sent Washington into chaos. Comey later claimed that Trump pressured him for loyalty, that he asked him to let go of the investigation into Michael Flynn. True or not, that allegation fueled a firestorm that led directly to the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller. And from that moment on, Comey became one of Trump's biggest enemies, and Trump became one of Comey's loudest critics. And here's why this matters now. The charges against Comey didn't just fall out of the sky. Many of Trump's allies have been demanding accountability for years, saying Comey's actions during the Russia probe, the Clinton email case, and his handling of FBI leaks were corrupt, biased, even criminal. So when prosecutors brought this indictment, Trump's supporters celebrated. To them, it wasn't just a legal win, it was payback. But here's the real question. Is this about justice, or is it about revenge? Because when you peel back the layers, you see the pattern. Every time Trump felt wronged, he pushed for investigations into his enemies, and Comey was at the very top of that list. So ask yourself this: if James Comey had never crossed Trump, would we even be here today? Would these charges exist? Or is this just the latest chapter in a long, bitter feud that has turned the justice system into a political battlefield? All right, let's step back for a second, because what we're seeing here is bigger than James Comey. This isn't just one man facing charges. No, this is about a country divided, where every courtroom battle feels like a political war. On one side, you've got Republicans calling this a long overdue reckoning. They say Comey represents everything that's wrong with Washington: arrogance, corruption, and a belief that powerful insiders can get away with anything. To them, this case isn't political, it's justice finally catching up. But on the other side, Democrats see it completely differently. They argue this is political theater, pure payback engineered by Trump's allies to smear one of his fiercest critics. They say it's about revenge, not the rule of law. And here's the thing: the truth might not even matter, because in America today, politics isn't about facts, it's about tribes. And whichever side you belong to determines how you see this case. If you're a Trump supporter, Comey is guilty before the trial even begins. If you're against Trump, the indictment itself is proof of corruption in the system. And that's dangerous, because when justice becomes just another weapon in the political arsenal, the whole system starts to crumble. Courts aren't supposed to be battlefields for party politics. They're supposed to be neutral, blind, and fair. But in this case, blind justice seems to be wearing red or blue glasses. So here we are, one indictment, two completely different stories: justice or politics, accountability or vengeance. The truth, somewhere in the middle. But in this battlefield, perception matters more than reality, and that's what makes this case so explosive. Let's not sugarcoat this. What's at stake here goes way beyond James Comey's reputation or even his freedom. This is about the credibility of the Justice Department, the integrity of Congress, and the trust of the American people in their own democracy. Think about it. If Comey is guilty, then one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in American history lied under oath and tried to obstruct Congress. That means the system was being manipulated from the inside. If that's true, it's devastating, because it tells Americans that the very people sworn to uphold the law might be breaking it themselves. But flip it around. If he's innocent, if this case really was driven by political pressure and revenge, then that's just as destructive, because it would mean the justice system itself is being weaponized, that the rule of law isn't about truth anymore, it's about power. And that's the nightmare scenario, because when citizens start to believe justice is just politics in disguise, the foundation of democracy begins to crack. People lose faith. They stop trusting the courts, the FBI, the government. And when trust disappears, chaos isn't far behind. So, what's at stake? The very idea that justice in America is blind, fair, and equal. If this trial proves otherwise, the damage won't just fall on James Comey. It'll fall on all of us, on the belief that truth still matters, on the hope that democracy can survive partisanship. In the end, Comey's trial is more than a legal drama. It's a test of the justice system, a test of democracy, and maybe, just maybe, a test of whether America can rise above its divisions or be swallowed by them. You know, it's easy to get lost in the politics, the headlines, the legal jargon. But behind every indictment, every courtroom battle, there are human beings, families, caught in the crossfire. And James Comey's case is no exception. Let's start with his daughter, Maureen Comey, a federal prosecutor in her own right. Earlier this year, she was dismissed from her position, and she claims it wasn't about her work. She says it was retaliation, political retaliation. Imagine that, losing your career not because of your performance, but because of your last name. And it didn't stop there. On the very day James Comey was indicted, his son-in-law, Troy Edwards, also a federal prosecutor, resigned. He said he couldn't, in good conscience, stay in a system where politics seemed to outweigh the oath he swore to the Constitution. Think about what that means. Careers derailed, reputations tarnished, a family dragged through the mud not for crimes they committed, but for being connected to the man at the center of the storm. Whether James Comey is guilty or innocent, his family is already paying the price. And maybe that's the hardest part of all this. Politics isn't just fought in courtrooms or on cable news. It seeps into homes, into relationships, into the lives of people who never asked to be on the front lines of America's political wars. The human cost of this case is real, and it's a reminder that while politicians argue and prosecutors posture, families bleed. Now, let's step back, because James Comey's indictment isn't happening in a vacuum. No, it's part of a much bigger story, a story about America itself, and the battle over truth, power, and accountability. Think about it. For decades, Americans have wrestled with the same question: is justice truly blind? From Watergate to Hillary Clinton's emails, from the Mueller probe to January 6th hearings, every major investigation has been shadowed by politics. And each time, trust in the system takes another hit. And here's the problem. Justice can't survive without trust. Courts, laws, even the Constitution itself, none of it works if people stop believing it's fair. If they believe the game is rigged, then the rules don't matter anymore. That's when democracy starts to break apart. So Comey's case isn't just about him. It's about what happens when justice and politics collide, and whether a democracy as divided as America can survive those collisions. Can a system built on checks and balances still function when every side sees the other as the enemy? Can truth still win in a country where facts are filtered through ideology? This trial is a mirror reflecting not only James Comey's fate, but America's. And what we see in that reflection will tell us whether the justice system is strong enough to rise above politics or whether it's doomed to sink beneath it. So here we are. James Comey, once the head of the FBI, now stands indicted. 2 charges, a possible prison sentence. A nation divided over whether this is justice served or politics weaponized. And that brings us back to the question we started with. When the former head of America's top law enforcement agency is charged with crimes, does justice prevail or does politics win? The truth is, we don't know yet. The trial hasn't even begun. But what we do know is this: the outcome won't just decide James Comey's fate. It will shape how millions of Americans view their justice system for years to come. If the courts prove themselves fair, maybe trust can be rebuilt. But if this turns into just another partisan circus, the damage could be permanent. And that's why you matter in this conversation. Because democracy doesn't survive on autopilot. It survives when ordinary people stay engaged, ask hard questions, and refuse to let truth be drowned out by noise. So tell me, what do you think? Is James Comey's indictment the triumph of justice, or just politics dressed up in legal clothing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voice. And if you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because these aren't just stories. They're the battles shaping the future of democracy. At the end of the day, justice isn't just decided in courtrooms. It's decided in the hearts and minds of the people who believe in it. And that means the verdict is bigger than James Comey.